A lot of times people think spiritual attack is something dramatic, but it can actually be something just like exhaustion, brain fog, overthinking, or just feeling drained after being around someone. So, in this video, we're going to talk about the concept of spiritual attack and what you can do to prevent it. So, I want to first explain when I say spiritual attack, I'm basically using it broadly to describe any time someone or something's energy has gotten into your energy field and you have a detrimental effect. So, the thing about a spiritual attack is what I don't think a lot of people realize is that it can actually be from something as simple as someone looking at your photo, looking at you, looking at a video of you, being around someone, or you can be in a place. So it can also be just if somebody thinks about you. So there's a lot of different ways that a spiritual attack situation can happen. So in this video, I'm going to cover a whole bunch of different ways that I've experienced spiritual attack. And in subsequent videos, I'll go into each of those in more detail. So before I talk about the concept of spiritual attack, I want people to understand that when it comes to spiritual attack from people, a lot of times people are not intentionally trying to attack you, but they're just not aware of their own energy and their impact on other people. So that is the case a lot of times, but sometimes it is not. And I think the thing that is most important, especially in this, era where we're in a awakening ascension process, is that it's very, very important to understand your own energy and to be understanding of when something is not your energy. And learning how to do that takes time. And I think for whatever reason, I just ended up having a ton of experiences as learning experiences, maybe just to be able to share people so that you can understand that, maybe what you're experiencing is something that is from someone else or something else, and it's not necessarily you. And I think it takes time and discernment to be able to understand what is your energy and what is someone else's energy. Now, I did a video a while back on this book called Ask and It Is Given. And in this book, they have a emotional guidance scale. And I think that this scale is important to understand because you need to understand kind of your emotional range. And when you get outside of that range, then that's something that you need to be aware of so that you can say, okay, this is not my energy. Excuse me. So this is why it's very, very important to understand and know yourself, understand your energy, and be able to tell when something is not your energy. So the first thing I want to talk about is the concept called psychic courting. So psychic courting in and of itself is not bad. We are all energetically courted to other people, to our family, to our friends, to our partners. But what ends up happening sometimes is that someone can court to you and end up draining you or making you think constantly of them. So I'll give you an example of one time when something happened to me. I was at work and I was around somebody who also happened to be, in my opinion, very psychic, but they were not aware of it. And a lot of times, psychic abilities look like somebody who is anxious because they're picking up on energy. And so they are more prone to be energetically, more strong. And so this person just looked at me, and I immediately felt a tug in my sacral chakra, and I felt so exhausted that I wanted to put my head on the desk. And that was immediate. And I think at the time I was not exactly clear about what that meant, but eventually I understood that that was an example of psychic courting. Now, that happened and I was able to get over that. But actually, later, this person ended up being in my mind a lot, and so I realized that they also kind of courted to my mind. I think when it comes to those kind of situations, when you find yourself thinking a lot about someone, you need to understand, is this something I'm thinking, or am I just picking up on the thoughts of them? So it may take some time to understand, but I think the best indicator would be if you found that, you're sitting there and all of a sudden thoughts of them pop into your mind. Then I would say that's most likely them and it's not you. But if you're constantly ruminating over a conversation and, thinking about them constantly, then you are probably creating a strong cord to them. So that's just something to be mindful of. When it becomes detrimental is when you let them impact you. So in that example, I felt energetically drained. Now, I do not think that this person consciously knew that just by looking at me and thinking of me intensely in that moment that he was psychically courting to me, but he did. And I ended up feeling energetically drained. So when that happens, you have to take steps to get back your energy, to cut those cords, and sometimes that takes time and practice. And I'll go over in different videos about how different practices that you can use to prevent that, or if it does happen, what to do about it. And so the next thing I want to talk about is just basic empath abilities. A lot of us are very sensitive to energy, and sometimes people call this being an empath. Sometimes people call it being clairsentient. Other people refer to it as a highly sensitive person. But if you're sensitive to energy, you very much could be picking up energy from other people that are in your environment, that you're close to. It can also be basically, anybody that you're around. So I'm going to talk about 3 different examples where I picked up on other people's energy and it was not good. Okay. So one person was somebody that I was working with, and I did not encounter them. They were just somebody that was working down the hall. But I just happened to start to feel this frantic feeling, is the best way I can explain it. And again, this is why it's important to understand your own energy and to look at your life situation and understand, is there anything going on in my life that would cause me to feel frantic? And so that's one step that you can take. But I started to feel frantic, and I started to kind of catastrophize and basically say, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't go into work. And so it really was something that was not me. It did not have anything to do with what I was personally experiencing. And I actually had somebody help me understand that that was not my energy. And once I understood that, I got mad and I just was like, okay, this energy is not mine. And it went away. And because of that, that's a psychologically unhealthy situation. That energy ended up going to somebody else. So that's another thing to be aware of, is that if we are energetically open, then we can be picking up on other people's unhealthy emotions at work. It can be, something like that. And another time, something happened where I was friends with somebody who was also energetically sensitive, and I think that's why I was able to connect with her. And she was having a distressful morning one morning. I was driving into work, and all of a sudden, I was having a decent drive, and all of a sudden, I was like, I have to turn around. I can't go to work. And again, you have to ask yourself, is this something that I would normally do? If I'm self-aware, I would say, no, this is not who I am. I don't know what happened, but, something just came out of nowhere. Something came out of the blue. And in that instance, I was driving and I realized that, like, wait a minute, this frantic kind of feeling like I can't do this, I need to go back home, this is somebody else's energy, this is not mine. And so later I went into work and I started thinking about it, and I thought, this has got to be somebody I know that I was picking up on their energy. And I asked someone, And they told me that they had a distressful morning, and they explained what had happened. And so I understood that I was just being sensitive and picking up on their emotions. So, you just think, oh, that's just, kind of innocent. But if it is something that is going to impact you to where you are changing your life, you're not going to go into work. Like, that's kind of a big deal. So it is important to understand. And in my wildest dreams, I would never have thought that, I'm going to be driving into work and pick up on somebody's energy and think, okay, I can't do this anymore. I need to go home. So these things happen, and we have to be aware and be able to discern what is my energy, what is somebody else's energy. And another example of just being energy sensitive or being an empath is when I had a contractor come over to my house to give me a quote on replacing some carpet. And as soon as I opened the door, I thought, I don't like this guy. I don't know. I'm not getting a good vibe from him. But I let him in anyway. And then it was like a day later, I think, when all of a sudden I went into this complete like depression. And again, if you know yourself and think, okay, we all kind of have bad days, right? And not life is not always, rosy all the time. We all have bad days that we go through. But this seemed a little lower than, my bad days. And so I was sinking to a place, of kind of like this hopelessness. And I honestly was there for a couple days. And I would say that experience really scared me because I realized just how much, you know, I could have gone really downhill. And that is something that I don't know that a lot of people understand, that they may be picking up on other people's energy a lot of times. And so that is why it's very, very important to understand your emotional range and, your normal states. And you're kind of, if you go up and down, whatever, and then all of a sudden you're down here, okay, maybe you're down there, but then you're staying down there. It's like, okay, wait a minute, this is not normal. And, it honestly took me a couple days, and that kind of scared me because those were 2 days where I let this energy be taken over me. And, this is not good. We don't want to have people affecting us like this. Okay, and the next one I'm going to talk about, this is actually a really weird one. And I would say that I have not made a video about this, but I will at some point. But this was probably one of the scariest experiences I've ever had. And it affected me more than any of these other experiences that I've had. So this was a very odd experience. But basically what happened was I had been on a dating app and I was talking to somebody, and I was kind of naive at the time, I think, and I wasn't really, paying attention to the bigger picture. I think I now know just how many weirdos are out there. But at the time I, was kind of naive about it. So I was talking to somebody, and then all of a sudden apparently he gave my picture and sent me over to somebody else. Now, again, this is a weird story. I'm not going to go into the whole story. But as soon as this guy contacted me and he showed me his picture, I was like, oh my gosh, no. Like, I was like, immediately, I saw him and I looked at his eyes and I'm like, I can tell this person, they know how to manipulate energy. And I would call that like black magic because it was not manipulating energy in a good way. And so anyway, so what ended up happening, just to make it brief, what ended up happening was I saw that, I interacted with him, I blocked him, and then a little bit later, he would, you know, reach out to me on a different phone number, and I could tell it was him because he always referred to me as Bright Eyes. Now, bright eyes to me means you have a lot of energy. So, if you are somebody who manipulates energy, they're going to be very attracted to that, right? So, what ended up happening was after one of these times when he reached out to me from another number and I blocked him, I ended up waking up in the middle of the night, and there was a being that was in the middle of my bed, and it was in the hypnagogic state. But this being was sitting there, and it scared me so bad. And I remember I was going like this, waving my arms, trying to get it, to go away. And I remember seeing a bunch of other arms, waving like that, trying to, I guess, probably protect me also. But when I woke up, I was so energetically drained. I mean, I was leaning over, and I remember taking a picture of myself and just, and I tried so many different things to get my energy back. I tried all my different things, and I ended up finally, it took me a few months, but I actually ended up going to a healer that helped me understand that situation and helped me restore my energy. So that's an example of when someone can honestly just look at your picture and manipulate your energy. And so this is possible, and that was deliberate, that was very intentional. I don't know the mechanics behind it, I don't want to know, but this is something that can happen. So, obviously, we all put our pictures out there on the internet, we put our videos out there. So it's not something that you need to be afraid of, but it's just something for you to be aware of. And the next one I want to talk about is what people have called psychic attack. Um, I'm kind of not sure exactly if I would call it that or if it was something else energetically, but I'll explain what happened. So I had gone to bed upset, and I was upset with somebody I was working with. And in the middle of the night, I woke up to a punch in my stomach, and I could feel like those four fingers in my stomach. And it knocked the wind out of me. And I remember just taking a deep breath and then going like this, and I honestly went back to sleep. I think by the time that had happened, I had already experienced so many different other things that honestly just didn't faze me. And I know that might have scared some people, but it did not for me. I think I was just kind of like, okay, whatever. I just got punched in the stomach. I'm going back to sleep. Um, but I think, a couple interpretations could be that the person that I was in an argument with could have, energetically maybe, thought some not nice thoughts about me, and it kind of interpreted as energetic psychic attack. Another interpretation could be that it could have been because I was in a angry state that I actually attracted a being that was also in a negative state into my environment, because I do have a portal in my house. So I do think, over time, historically, I have had a lot of different interactions with things going through my house. For the most part, they're not that negative, but I think that is one possibility in that scenario. But that's an example where this is, something that's not easily explained. It's not something that most people would experience. But I'm just letting you know that this can manifest in that way, whether it's a psychic attack or a being that you've pulled into your environment. And, this can manifest that way. And then the next thing I want to talk about are negative entities. And I've talked a little bit about this before, but negative entities are basically energy that is not connected to source. They are created from thought forms. They can be small, they can be manifest more as forms, kind of like, I don't know how to describe them, wolf like, dog like, the ones that growl, um, incubus, succubus, those types of things. There's different types of negative entities. And so this is a type of spiritual attack. So if you interact with a negative entity, they can come into your energetic space. Depending on how kind of evolved they are, they can, manipulate your energy and drain you because they are not connected to source. So they don't have any energy, but they can steal yours. And so that can happen, and you can pick up on negative entities from other people. They can jump off them onto you. They can, be out in your environment and you can encounter them. I've seen negative entities in hotels. I've seen them in the neighborhood. I've seen them in my house. Not all of them are necessarily out to, attack you, but a lot of times they can. And this is another form of spiritual attack. And then the last one is an experience that I had that I don't honestly know what this was, but I'm just sharing it as another example of things that can happen that are weird. Okay, so this is another example of a dating app where I was talking to somebody on a dating app, and I did not see their pictures, like their eyes on the picture, like they had sunglasses, or they had glasses on. It wasn't easy to see their eyes. And so after I was talking to this individual for a while, I said, can you send me a picture of your face with your eyes so I can see it? And he ended up sending me a photo. And when I saw his photo, again, just reading energy, when I saw his eyes, I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? So it looked to me like there was a being like peering behind one of his eyes. Now, again, I don't know what that was. I don't have a definition for that. All I know is there was something else in this guy. And so I actually told him about it because he had shared something that kind of helped me understand what might have happened. And so I think I understand kind of something that happened. But, I told him about it. And so I don't know if that's why this happened next. But what ended up happening was after I talked to him about that, I woke up the next morning at 4 in the morning, and I was sitting there in my bed, and I could tell there was some sort of entity that came through my bedroom that was coming up to like my nightstand, and it was making like a hissing noise. Like it basically sounded like a tire releasing air. That's kind of what it sounded like, but it was a constant, just like, And so I can sense this thing and I can hear it, and it's coming over to my nightstand, and I'm just kind of like, looking, and I just kind of, and then what was funny about that incident is that my dog heard it or saw it also, and his ears perked up, and he was tracking it going back to the bedroom door. So I don't know what that thing was. It did not necessarily attack me, but in my opinion, I think it was kind of like a warning to me, because I think that this entity wanted to make sure it stayed with this person, that it had its host, and I think it was kind of like checking me out. And I guess, I don't know, that's just my assumption. It did not try to do anything, but the point I'm trying to share is there's a lot of weird things that can happen in the spiritual world. And I don't know why I just have had all these different experiences, but I will tell you that I have learned about energy protection, about discernment. So it has become a great teacher for me, because a lot of us, we do not understand this. And it's especially important for people that are empaths, that are energy sensitive, to understand and to know about your own energy. So those are the different types of spiritual attacks that can happen. I will go over different practices that you can do, and I will cover some of these in more details in other videos. But I just wanted to share this concept because as you start to awaken, you will become more energy sensitive, and it's important for you to be aware when you are picking up from somebody else's energy, because we are sovereign beings, but we forget, and we have to learn how to manage and own our own energy. Okay, well, if you like this video, make sure to subscribe and like for more videos. Thanks.